Namaskar. Psychoanalysis and Spirituality, Das Mahavidya, the 10 Mothers Kali. Episode 3. Our journey into Das Mahavidya or the 10 Mothers, last episode we had developed a perspective. Today we proceed to a deeper engagement with the first Mahavidya or the first great Mother Kali. Our engagement is from a psychoanalytic standpoint and our guide is psychoanalysis consultant Mr. Himanshu Vaidya. Namaste.
Namaste.
Sir, is it true that Kali is also seen as the ground of being?
Indian mythology is so rich and so creative and so elaborate that for every entity, there are so many stories and myths. There is so much of philosophizing. So, in one of the accounts related to Kali, especially Kali as it appears as one of the Mahavidyas, in that account, Kali is seen as the ground of being, because Kali is related to Kal, time, and time is the first expanse which holds into itself all other entities of existence. So, in that sense, Kali is taken to be the ground of existence. But there are some contradictory points also. Because if you take Kali in an ontological sense to be the ground of existence, then it is in direct contradiction to the Vedic idea and idea of Sri Aurobindo and others who believe that the ultimate reality actually is consciousness, bliss, light, and existence. It is Ananda, not the terrifying version of Kali. And therefore, the whole idea is about involution, that it is from that fully conscious state of light, bliss, existence, consciousness that things have gone down and come to the level where one of the most terrifying aspects is Kali. And therefore, in that sense, the journey actually is from Kali to Tripura Sundari, who would be at that level of all light and existence. So, in that sense, Kali is not the ontological ground of everything, but it is the opposite pole of manifestation. That manifestation started from all light, all Ananda, went down and reached a bottom, the most terrifying aspect of it, which would be Kali. In that sense, the journey from Kali to Tripura Sundari would be a journey from the bottom to the top. From the, if you talk of the Buddhist picture, they talk of the 14 worlds, the most enjoyable heavenly world and the most terrifying world. In that sense, Kali symbolizes that most terrifying world. This is the ontological aspect of it. The only exception would be if you are a pure materialist and you talk about the infinite holy darkness from which everything emerges and to which everything would return. If that is the philosophical conceptualization, only then in an ontological sense, Kali would become the ground. Otherwise, Kali is not the ontological ground, but what is important is Kali is the operational ground where we start from. So we have to differentiate between the ontological ground and the operational ground. That Kali is the operational ground, not the ontological ground. The ontological ground would be a ground of all light, all Ananda, all celebration, all bliss, from which everything has come. And one of the most terrifying things to which the involution has reached is symbolized by Kali and experienced by us when we actually experience torture or something alike to that unbearable torture. That is where we enter into the world of Kali. But from an operational point of view, it becomes different. From an operational point of view, for an individual, we start usually the inner journey when something is deeply disturbing to us. And we resolve it and we move into a state of happiness. And this is like if you have been sick and you are tortured by sickness, the moment the sickness goes, suddenly you go into a state of exhilaration before you return back to normalcy. So from a state of torture, you go into a state of exhilaration and then you come back to normalcy. So Sri Aurobindo talks about it, and Sri Aurobindo says, how can you know Sri Krishna without knowing Kali? Meaning, unless you go through that intense torture and suffering, how do you get into that ecstasy?
Fair enough.
That is the individual thing, that you start off from Kali and finally reach Tripura Sundari. So it is a zone of journey of life, a zone through which we pass through, and one of the most difficult zones we pass through. So from an operational point of view, if you look at it from psychoanalytic point of view, we are talking about what Jung was calling as nakia. That a person passes through intense psychological suffering. He takes the inner dive, a journey into the inner world, understands the inner world in some essential terms, does something which he believes will help him. Part of the things get done by the unconscious. Part of the things get done by nature, by destiny. And the person comes out of that state of intense struggle with lot of happiness and almost a purpose for life found now. So he is a man with quite some happiness, grounding, and almost a mission or a quasi mission. And this is a very
Right.
state of being where you have profoundly understood life and you are on with life with a deep found happiness after an intense journey, and you find some purpose or meaning in life, or you flow with the existence. And this experience of turmoil which leads you to that profoundly meaningful existential life here on, that part Jung calls as nakia, and Freud called that as splendid isolation. Freud's struggle of 7 to 8 years, where he was in intense neurosis before he was able to understand, conceptualize, and heal much of it. So I think every person who has a destiny to go deeper inside of him passes through this intense, difficult phase in the inner world. Freud called it the splendid isolation. Jung called it nakia, and perhaps in the East we call it the some part, not completely, but some part of the Kali Mahavidya. A part of inner journey. This is not only that. I'm not saying the nakia or splendid isolation covers the whole of it. It does not. But there is an overlap that this moving through the Kali Mahavidya is like moving through an inner world of ours and encountering the most difficult parts of it. And so this is one part, that when you apply the concept of Kali as the ground of the operational ground, then this is how psychologically, psychoanalytically it becomes the operational ground. We start from there and we reach the other end. In between is the journey is the nakia. Now, if you apply it to society, that also applies. That the society starts as a savage society and slowly moves into a more ordered, peaceful society. So that also is a movement from Kali to Tripura Sundari of the sociological history. And when you apply the same concept to Yuga, you again move from Kali to Satyuga. So Kali symbolizes the Kali Yuga and Tripura Sundari would symbolize the Satyuga. And
In
similarly,
fact, when you say that, similarly, the process of birth itself is so, it appears to be so painful, so as if somebody is dying, it has blood. You're coming from a very dark womb with so much of pain, and you come into life. So the transition of the soul to the form of the body itself is the state of Kali, and then you again move ahead towards it, and then the death itself can be Kali as well, like birth.
right. So if you apply one more area where you can apply this concept is the concept of the universe. That you start off in a very high energy, difficult state, and slowly some order comes into that. Planets cool down, some life appears, some events happen. So you move from very high energy to a plasma state, to a cool down state, to a more ordered state of life. So that also is a movement. So we see in existence at various levels, right from an individual, his inner journey, to the society's journey, to the universe's journey, to the yugas which are going on. All of that, you can apply this concept in different ways. But the context in which we are talking about today is the context of use of Mahavidya at an individual level for self-knowing and self-transformation.
Very interesting. In our previous episode, you had discussed about how these mothers have their own story of origin, their own forms, own symbolic versions, the way they hold the weapons, the way they have been picturized and depicted. So, as said, every Mahavidya or the Great Mother has a story of origin. So, what is the story of origin of Kali or Ma Kali, as Hindus call it?
There are many stories of origin. And the interesting point is, different stories are used by different gurus for different disciples. Because there is also an element of customization in this Mahavidya. All the Mahavidyas, the entire package of Mahavidyas, there is an element of individual customization at every level. Like, which Mahavidya should you start with? After completing the Mahavidya you start with, which next Mahavidya should you take? Which Mahavidya you should omit and not go into? Or should you take only one Mahavidya? Now, once you take that Mahavidya, let's say you take up Kali, then which myth of Kali to use? And there are various myths. I'll just take two, and out of that, one is very interesting, psychoanalytically speaking. The one myth is very simple. There is a Sati is not called by her father at a yagna that he does. She feels insulted. So she talks to Shiva about this insult and that she must go. Shiva dissuades her. She does not yield to him. She continues to be angry. So Shiva wants to go away and not engage in that conversation further. So she blows herself, not blows herself, but she divides herself, or let me say, she throws emanations in 10 directions, which blocks Shiva from going away. So you have Shiva, who is blocked from every way by the 10 emanations of Sati, and these 10 emanations are the Mahavidyas. And symbolically, what it means is Shiva is the state of enlightenment. And you can reach the state of enlightenment through any of these 10 Mahavidyas. Shiva is surrounded by these Mahavidyas. This is one myth. if you look at it, there is another myth, and there's commonality in both the myths from psychoanalytic standpoint. The second myth is the same thing. Her father does a yajna, not invited. She talks to Shiva. He does not yield to her, and she says we should not go there. We are not invited. She is not reconciled. So she starts burning in anger and goes completely black out of her anger. So she becomes Kali. Second myth, Sati becomes Kali, and from Kali, then 9 other emanations emerge, and that is how thus Mahavidya come to be. In this conceptualization, Kali becomes the ground of the Mahavidyas, and Kali becomes first among equals.
First among
equals. So in this conceptualization, Kali has slightly more significance than others. There would be another way of approaching it where Tripura Sundari has the highest significance, but that for the moment we'll keep aside. Coming back to the psychoanalytic aspect of the two stories. In both the cases, there is aggression towards the father and the father figure cannot be expressed and therefore turns self-destructive. And the acting out happens by self-destruction in a very purposeful way. But this is very clear that we are looking at mothers who are born out of rage of a mother.
Beautiful.
That we have mothers who are born out of rage of the mother. And that rage is because of accumulated aggression towards the father figure and the father. And as the aggression releases itself, the most concentrated form becomes that of Kali. And then there is a series of emanations, and as more and more aggression is released in the form of Mahavidyas, slowly the aggression goes out, and then you come to, so first you have all the Ugra forms. Then you have Ugra Saumya forms. And after the aggression has been released out, you have the Saumya forms, ending with Tripura Mahasundari. So we see this whole movement from a concentrated aggression released, going lighter, and finally ending in light, beauty, bliss, celebration. So from a self-destructive rage to celebration, a causeless celebration. From the most ugly to the most beautiful in the three lokas. Tripura Sundari. Tripura is the three lokas. So from the most fearsome, most ugly, most savage to the most beautiful, most refined. That is how the movement begins. And obviously, from a psychoanalytic standpoint, it almost looks like we are looking at very deep engagement, very profound engagement with Kleinian phenomena and aggression. From a tantric point, we are dealing essentially with Mooladhara.
So from the Kleinian perspective, you're saying the split of between the good breast and the bad breast?
We are dealing with the most rageful form of the bad mother. The split being
right.
open and we are dealing with the most difficult forms of the bad mother, the omnipotent attacking mother. Not attacking, but the omnipotent bad mother. But the irony here is, the twist here,
Precious one.
yeah, the twist here is that the omnipotent, savage and ugly mother, appearing to be the bad mother.
Can we have a pause for a second?
Yeah. There is a ironical thing here, that what appears as a bad mother, omnipotent bad mother, is not really speaking omnipotent bad mother to me. Because when we look at the depiction of the mother has 4 hands, and one of the hands is actually for blessing and giving you what you want. It is just that this form of a mother is a very strict teacher. So the teacher is there to give, not to take, but the process of teaching is very demanding. So what we have here is a omnipotent mother who kills, who appears to be bad, but who is not bad, who is fierce and savage, but not bad, and who kills bad people and gives boons to the disciples, but is very demanding from the disciples, very intense. So this is we'll see it when we look at it. Let me just put on these visuals so we can have an idea of what we are talking about. So let me just share it. Is the screen visible?
Yes, it is visible.
So let us take a look at a few visuals so we can refer to them as we discuss. These are the 10 Mahavidyas. Today we are talking about the first one, Kali. So we can see how she is depicted. This is how she is depicted.
Beautiful.
If you look here, she has 4 hands, a sickle which has blood, which is fresh. She has cut somebody's neck very, it's very
Heartlessly.
I mean, it has been cut almost like a few moments back. That is the kind of freshness of blood. She wears skulls, human skulls. Some people talk of them only as human skulls. Some gurus, to make the form more terrifying, talk about the skulls of small children. And she is standing on the Shiva, which symbolically depicts. So she is full of rage, full of anger, savage. From her tongue, blood is dripping down, blood of somebody freshly devoured. And there is one hand in blessing, which is what brings in that ambivalence. That it is not an all bad mother. This mother is strong, savage, powerful, fierce, bad for others, not for the disciple. And there is a benevolence to this mother. And the mother, when she is benevolent and gives, she gives strongly, but everything is so full of strength that we find it difficult to hold. We don't really have the holding capacity to undergo the process or the result of the process. So this is one part, and she stands on the Shiva, which means the state of enlightenment, the state of Shiva, is completely covered by the power of the state of Kali, which means the difficulties of the Muladhara Chakra. And there are 2 difficulties. One difficulty is the fear of survival, and the second is the fear of attack. The 2 fundamental fears that we have, the fear of survival and the fear of attack. and that leads to death anxiety and pain anxiety. And they are the strongest of forces which don't allow us to get into the state of enlightenment. There are other elements also which are dealt with by different devis, but the first one has to deal with largely the entire depiction of Kali is of the Muladhara chakra of very early life Kleinian phenomenon. And if you look in one hand, there is a scissor, it gives rise to castration anxiety in us. So this is that if we want to free Shiva from all that covers up Shiva, the state of enlightenment, fear covers it up, quest for power covers it up, quest for love and attachment covers it up, quest for art covers it up, everything covers it up. So one by one, all that covers Shiva has to be dealt with. But here we are told about the Muladhara phenomena of kill or be killed, attack or be attacked, that kind of the savage state which is always inside of us. The in Jungian
anything related to orality, oral stage of infantile life stage, because of the devouring, blood sucking or drinking blood. So is there anything to do with the oral part of that?
We are dealing with the Freud's oral stage of 0 to 2 years, but we are dealing largely with phenomena of the Kleinian type. You are right, in the oral sense also, there is this oral rage and the sucking of blood and this holding of the neck which is severed. You don't let it go. The aggression is so much. Even after killing the person, the aggression is still there. So it is something which is deeper than just a murderous rage. It is more like a torturous rage. So this is one part. Let me just go to now. Every Mahavidya has a corresponding yantra. So these are the 10 yantras of 10 Mahavidyas. We'll come to them later. This is the depiction of Kali.
Beautiful picture.
Now, if you look at Kali's yantra, this is how it is. If you just look at line diagram, it is this. You put colors, it is this. And the center part is the Bindu or the Shiva where we have to reach the state of enlightenment. And you enter from these doors, the 4 doors. And there is symbolism of everything inside.
Interestingly, the symbol is also of an inverted triangle.
Yeah. So that depicts the femininity. In the yantra scheme of things, all inverted triangles are usually feminine and all upward triangles are masculine.
All right.
And in some things, you will see the integration of the two. Inverted triangle and upward rising triangle over the other. In Sri Yantra,
forming like a star.
Yeah. So this Shiva is covered up by all these things. And the whole idea is journey is to move from this any of these doors and reach Shiva, the Bindu. But this is a graphical depiction of a process which is of this Mahavidya. But if you look at it psychoanalytically, whatever you do, you cannot escape the problems that we encounter in psychoanalysis. You cannot escape the Kleinian problems. You cannot escape the Oedipus. You cannot escape the problems of expression, cannot express the problems of disintegration and so on. But this is one package of dealing with them in different ways. Now, these are symbolism, like these are 5 triangles. Some people say these are the 5 bodies. Some people say something else. Every school will have its own thing. these three, some will say these are the sattva, tamas, and rajas. Some will say something else. I am not an expert on this. This is something which gurus will know. Those who are gurus of this vidya. I am not even an initiate in that area. So this symbolism is something we'll not go into. But what is clear is the journey from here, any of the doors to reach to Shiva. In between is resolution of all the problems, which are largely psychological, and that is where psychoanalysis is. That if you look at this journey from here to here, in this entire journey, lot of psychoanalysis will happen, although it won't be named so. Now, just as every Devi has a, this Mahavidya has a yantra, it also has a mantra. So I have put here, and we'll spend some time on this. So this is a collection of everything. There's something called the mantra and the bij mantra. So like this is the full mantra of Tripura Sundari, and the bij is this. Aim Klim Saw. This is the bij. We'll spend 2 minutes on this, what it means. But for all the 10, these are the bij mantras. So these are some of the visuals I wanted you to take a look at. Yeah, I think we can still look at the bij mantra. We can finish that point. So this is very important. That if you look at Tripura Sundari mantra, it is Om Aim Klim Saw. Tripura Sundari Namo Namaha. Now, this is where sound is used to achieve healing of psychopathology, which is a very exciting area and a completely new area for us, because we use only language for interpretation. We don't use sounds which don't have any meaning in known language. So mantras use all the kinds of sounds. Sounds which have meaning, sounds which don't have any meaning in language, but they have an effect. So this whole science of sound and its effect on nature and its effect on our internal world, that is this whole idea of mantra, this whole discipline of mantra science. What is important and exciting is this. If you look at this Tripura Sundari mantra, this is the complete mantra. Now this takes effect in 3 different ways. If you look at this, Aim Klim Saw, it's very difficult to find meanings of these words. But this has meaning, Tripura Sundari Namo Namaha. That I bow down to Tripura Sundari. So this cultivates this whole idea of surrender, this whole idea of a joyful surrender, not a submission of defeat. It's a joyful surrender out of love. So this is what it activates the heart chakra. It tempers the Manipur chakra of power drive. It tempers the power drive, intensifies the drive of love and attachment in a positive way. So Tripura Sundari Namo Namaha. But it's very interesting. These 3 sounds, Aim, Klim, Saw, they are what are called the bij sound. It's like in pharmaceuticals, we have something called active pharmaceutical ingredient. That if you take a medication, let us say you take a tablet for acidity, there will be one chemical which will bring down acidity. But in the tablet, there will be a carrier thing also, something that will carry it to the site. We also have a container, an inert container in which both of them are put. So the active ingredient is very small. Other ingredients either are carriers or containers. Okay? So bij mantras are those active ingredients, the most active form of it. So these are called bij mantra, and every Das Mahavidya has its own bij mantra. Not one, but many are used. Now, in Sanskrit language, we have this idea of dhatus, the source of words. So of all the sounds, you choose certain sounds which are more profitable more productive in giving rise to words. All sounds are not equally productive or equally useful in converting to words. So how are words going to be made? So for that, Sanskrit has a concept of dhatu, and this is something like this, that we have less than 1 minute. I think we should continue with this for 5 minutes after we rejoin.